It's just gonna be awkward, so how about y'all take seats? And then I'll do the rest of the shit as I do it.
Let's do that.
Do you have a preference of anything?
Is
there a way you wanted us to sit?
I'm actually very pansexual. Very preference.
Love it.
Love it.
Oh, shoot.
Okay. So there's two mics, so that's the mic there, and we can share the mic, I guess.
See, the screening room is always dark.
Sorry. Okay, so I'll be a little nervous, I'll be a little shaky, but we'll get there. Fine. I mean, I wore my, how am I looking? How am I looking?
Gorge. Stop.
I wore my bougiest dress at Soho House, you got to. So hey, my name is Rayyan Monkey. And that's, Rayyan is pronounced like ray, like a ray of sunlight, which you cannot deny I am. And Yan, like you know how cats play with that dhaga wala yarn? That's Rayyan, okay? That's me. Not Ryan, not Rayhan, just Rayyan. And you know, I'm also only ever respond to she, her pronouns. Yeah, that's just me. I just only ever respond to she, her. But that's not actually true. It's all depending on the situation and the context. I may totally respond to being misgendered, and I actually do. If, for example, if a cisgender person were to misgender me in a place that they have power, and in this situation, if I were to correct them misgendering, maybe I don't get that thing that I really need to get to do what I'm going to do for the next 2 years. So in that situation, I'm going to let this person misgender me. And I want to kind of let you all hold this thought before we proceed. Okay, before we proceed, also, can we have a huge round of applause for this day? Huge round of applause for Jaydeep, Sarkar, for Soho, from Daisy, so the entire Daisy family, quite a lot of them are here, and they've all put together a brilliant freaking day. I haven't seen anything like that, and I'm really glad we are here. So the thing about any discussion about transgender and non-binary issues is that by the essence of it, it is not one where they are easy to categorize answers. There's no easy ideas, there's no answers, there's no exact right and wrongs, there's no absolute ones or zeros. Because, you know, I mean, we barely work with the binary. The reason for this is because that's just how we are. As transgender, NB, non-binary folk, we're quite undefinable. There's no absolute one true transgender experience either. Even the 3 transgender people sitting here all express and experience our transgender experience very different from each other. And then we are still trans women and not trans mass, and that's a whole other thing. Why? Why do you think it is? It's not because we are intentionally vague and we just love to be metaphorical all the time. No. That's just an inadvertent truth of our existence, that we are metaphors. But it's because gender in itself is vague. As I sit here, I see as many expressions of gender as I see heads in this room. Yeah? You might think I'm masc and I'm femme, but even in the masc and femme, it just goes on. So, oh my god, if we are going to talk about looking beyond the binary, and that, by the way, is the topic of this discussion today, then definitely there's a lot of space for context and nuance, okay, if we're going to have this discussion. And honestly, there's a dire fucking need for it. So we better bring that today. And that's kind of where I want to kind of tell you all this is a session. This is a discussion, and we all have our own experiences, and it's fun. Alright. Is that one yours? Which one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's mine. It's here.
Cool.
It's okay, I got that wrong. Thank you, Paloma.
We all have the same. Yeah. Cheers.
We're doing that.
Around and about and.
Okay. So this is the point where I've said, I'll leave it to you if you want to come while I say your name, or you're already seated, but as you can see, they're all already seated. So I'm just going to introduce them. So while going through my colleague Nida's notes, that's Nida there. Hi Nida. Don't look at her, look at me. I thought I read somewhere, she began her journey with Bonita. And I'm like, wow. That is interesting. But why does Nida think it's irrelevant? And then I calm down, I read it. And it says, Tess Joseph first started the film journey by directing Bonita quiz contest at one point.
I think this role is too young.
Yeah. I mean, but some people
Probably might have participated.
Yeah, we know.
Tess Joseph began her casting journey on Meera Nair's namesake and went on to work with many international directors like Wes Anderson, Jeffrey Brown, Ang Lee, and Doug Liman. She also casted for the film Lion, for which Monkey Man actor got nominated at the Oscars. The same freaking Oscars, by the way, that asked her to be on their voting panel. Oh, and she also worked on casting on the Monkey Man film. Yeah. Also, she casted for White Tiger, that film with Priyanka Chopra and Rajkumar Rao you all watched, based on that book that none of you read. Tess Joseph, along with her friends, continues to run a program called Childwise, which believes that children have innate wisdom and potential which adults need to learn from, and I completely agree. She's the director of Commune, and what the fuck, yes, she plays the fucking piano. Can we have a huge round of applause? Tess Joseph in his Instagram bio, this is one of my things that's stopping it. Casting director, Tess Joseph Casting, makes sense. Curation, Khaleesi, Spoken Fest. Academy member, of course you're gonna flaunt that. Daydream believer, and it makes sense. And now to the next person. So this person, I'm giving an introduction for this person the second time in this weekend itself, and I want to say a few words that I have said exactly the same yesterday. In a long list of transgender and non-binary humans that I came across, either in person and honestly mostly behind the screen, she was the final straw that broke the monkey's gender. The final push that got me to accept my truth and transition to believe it was possible. I guess this was just because of how authentic and behind the scenes we got to be with Trinetra's life and transition. And she's today one of the most recognized transgender actors this industry has. An actual doctor, an actor, and is Forbes India's 30 under 30 alumna. As Meher in Zoya Akhtar and Reema Kakti's Made in Heaven, Trinetra made a lot of trans women's dreams come true. She's also the queen of the Indian transgender queen of Prime, Amazon Prime. In addition to Made in Heaven, we see Meher playing Trinetra in Prime Video's GLAD nominated docu-series Rainbow Rishta. For those of you, because some of you are not clapping, don't know, then GLAD is basically like Queer Loka Oscars. And by the way, one of the directors of Rainbow Rishta is here, Jaydeep Sarkar, and he has asked that I asked him to perform GLAD nominated documentary. Can we have some noise for that? Trinetra's Instagram bio reads, I identify as an old sari. Makes sense. And also actor, doctor, aurat, and trans. All facts. Wagaira, I only learned yesterday. I always thought it was something to do with vaginas. It's not. It's like Wagaira. Okay, it's like Wagaira. It's actually bad. So you round of applause, Trinetra. For the first time I met this next person, I kid you not, was when she showed up to my home for Eid this year. And two trans women I consider dear friends brought her along. And of course, a trans girl telling me that I'm going to bring someone else, I'm like, you're welcome, you can just come on. But now, I get to say on every single Eid, मैंने तो Bonita को बिरयानी खिलाई. Bonita is an independent filmmaker and actor. She's most known and loved for her fierce portrayal of Kulu in the Bakar Banerjee's LSD 2. Did anyone see it today? Again, Bonita's journey from a small town girl to a lead actress on the big screen and now on Netflix resonates deeply with many trans women like myself looking for their space and to have their voice in Indian cinema. A compulsive filmmaker, in addition to LSD2, she's also known for If You Know, You Know, an incredibly beautiful short film which she wrote directed and acted in. If you saw it today earlier and you liked it, then she won the Best Emerging Indian Filmmaker Award at Kashish. Makes complete sense. And for those of you who do not know, Kashish is like the Glad of India. Bonita's debut was in a total indie film, It's All in Your Head, back in 2023, directed by Dhruv Solanki. Jyotsna Rajpurohit, who's in the room, is she in the room?
She's not.
She's not. That's loving cute. She's worked on that, and she's also worked on, if you know, I know, and she's in the building, so you know that. Also, Bonita's acted in a bunch of ads, and she was also crowned as Miss Trans Queen India in 2019. Bonita's Instagram bio reads, actor, true story. This is my favorite. Small, it's a cherry emoji, so small cherry, big dreams. Me too, babe. Me too. Then it says watch LSD on Netflix or at Soho today morning, and writer director at the if you know kind of thing. So thank you. Can we have a huge round of applause? Okay, cool. So I'm still going to keep trying to figure this mic out because this is too much, clearly, and it's fine. No? Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to discuss is being looked up to, right? But like really what we are trying to get to here is the idea of having people to look up to grow towards, right? Like whether you're an actor, whether you work in, I don't know, CA, whether you work as an artist, architecture, you would have someone to look up to. So even within the film industry, doesn't matter where in the film industry you occupy it, you maybe need someone to look up to. Trinetra in Rainbow Rishta asks herself, am I everything that I wanted to be growing up? And she answers yes. Among other things, being looked up to by other people is something that she cherishes. Since we have two transgender actors here and a cisgender casting director, and that was my notes, I didn't have to say the cisgender part. I thought let's talk a little bit about this before we get into transgender cinema things. So, Tess, if you can kind of, start this discussion with, I have been speaking a lot, so now I'll have my sets and you speak. You said once, when I was growing up, TV, films, media, these were careers no one spoke of. Like many others, I too wanted to be a doctor. By the way, Trinetra is a doctor. Doctors and okay. My mom pushed me to give the entrance exam for mass communications, which was at that time a brand new degree at St. Xavier's. Nobody was really doing it. And yet here you are, successful casting director, and someone folks look up to. Like I look up to you. Especially. Even within this panel, we look up to you to bring us insights from the cinema. Because again, like I said, you heard the names of the films I said, Oscar freaking invited her. So Trinetra and Bonita are great actors, but the reality is we're just about getting here. So Tess is going to bring us that perspective. And who did you look up to as inspirations? Who were your seniors in the industry that you worked with? And more importantly, how did they help you get to where you are?
Okay. So I
Yeah, it's working. Yeah, it's fine. So I want to go a little back because I think you picked up a story from childhood almost, like, growing up, going to college. And I think the first people we look up to are the people around us. And that really plays a role. And we were having a little chat before and I said, your friends play a huge role in who you look up to, what matters to you, and what are the things that are going to be. I almost feel like your core beliefs, your roots are there. Interestingly, my closest friends are, a lot of them are queer. And I've been, we've been a friend circle where, we've seen this transition, especially if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you didn't even understand what any of this meant. Like I look at my mother and I think it's amazing that, she's so cool. She's way cooler than most people that I know that she can talk about sexuality, she tries, she's constantly trying. And I think that's one of the things, if you have someone around you who shows you that it's okay to try, that it's okay to take a chance, that's what you start looking up to. So you don't look up to people, but you start looking up to, I almost feel, the characters that you want, the beliefs that you want around you. So I'm going to go a little shift away from, in the industry, it's tough. I think that, I've seen a lot of movies. I've been watching movies since like my dad made me watch like movies from the age of 8, and that also film festival films. So I think I was sitting and watching like everything from sex scenes to like absolutely gruesome violence and everything with my father at the age of 8, reading subtitles, and everything became okay to talk about. And I think that was more interesting for me, that we could talk about every single thing. So if I saw cinema, I didn't see as much. I did see all. I mean, we all watched. For those who belong to that generation, Sunday night you had to watch, but you had to watch the afternoon film in my home. Like that was a given. So I think it changes when. What I want to say is that there are two things when you grow up and you start having power and you have success. Is that, are people looking up to you for your success and power, or are they looking up to you as a person? And you have to be very clear with where you stand as a person. So I am very clear of, like, if you're looking at me, you're looking at me as for who I am. I couldn't care about all the other stuff. That's incidental. If you want to look at that, go to the casting page and you will know the projects we're doing and this, that, etc. But yeah, at the end of the day, the people that I look up to are not industry per se, but there are people around me, and they keep moving and changing. I keep adding and removing because I just think that keeps changing. In the storytelling, I can tell you, there are a lot of filmmakers that I looked at and I watched. One of my biggest influences growing up was Truffaut. And Truffaut, because the first film of Truffaut I saw was Jules and Jim. It was not 400 Blows. And for those who don't know, Jules and Jim is it's a lovely triangle between two men and a woman, and it's the most ambiguous sexuality film. And I loved it, and I was just like, oh, this is also what friendship can be. And it was such a great film. And 400 Blows for, again, knowing what this system does to you and realizing there's a wall. So I watched that to, like, I'll say Meera Nair was a huge influence. She's the first filmmaker I ever worked with. She taught me that, it was never about, like, there's so many times when it was never about scenes and the work, but what we brought to the room, the energy you brought to the room, the passion you brought to the room, of really just wanting to make this happen. So we could be absolute chaos, but we could make this happen because everyone is in sync. So those are the things that I ended up looking up to. But I think the big onus becomes then what do you create for yourself? Because I think people tend to look up to power, people tend to look up to success, people forget to look up to other people.
I'm giving the mic.
Okay, actually, I handed you. No, but you want it back? Yeah, but I want to. Okay, we'll do Bonita. Yeah. Okay. Bonita. Oh yeah, sorry.
So, who did you look up to growing up? Also, let's try and taking the nuance that Tess just shared. Who did you look up to as people growing up? And also, as an abstract idea, as a trans femme person, as a trans woman who's an actor, who did you look up to when you think about acting and things like that? And then we'll come to the second part, which is what does it feel like to be a trans woman that people look up to?
Yeah. I think the first very incident that I can ever remember that actually changed my life, like on real grounds, and this was the person that I thoroughly looked up to, that I wanted to become, that I wanted to tell people that this is who I am. This is exactly who I am. And this was Ghazal Dhaliwal. She is a screenwriter for films, and it was her episode on Satyameva Jayate Tamil Khan. And I remember I was in my village at my uncle's place, and we were getting water from somewhere or something, and then my sister calls on my uncle's phone and she's like, you need to watch Satyameva Jayate right now, like you need to go and watch it right now. I'm like, what is going on? And then I go and see that my uncle is already watching that show. So to see her communicate all the things that I have been struggling to communicate with my family with such easy pace, with such understanding language to these parents was a blessing for me. I could never done that good of a job that what she did for me. And I was awed by her, absolutely, and the way she was presenting herself in every way, I think I was awed by her, and I can absolutely say that this was the person that I looked up to throughout my life. Till this time, I think I respect her so much, and I'm always inspired by her.
that is amazing. Like, you know, when you said this also, it just makes me think about whoever.
What?
Oh, sorry. It
makes me think about this fact that when you don't have anyone to look up to, how much that can matter. Because like this example of ghazal really resonates, right? Like the idea that someone's calling you, hey, listen, look.
Yeah.
And there was a point when, like, for example, my family, the reference point would not be ghazal because that's too current. So the reference point is still very transphobic names from Bollywood and, like, you know, characters that existed that are going to be so and so. So it makes so much of a difference. And now, before us, can you talk about what it's like to be one of those people? Like the same, like it's fact, right? I'm sure some DMs might have come in or something. So what is fact?
I know it does, but it also puts me under a lot of pressure, you know. Like I would never say that I'm a perfect person who's an amazing, I don't know, flawless personality and sort of the like. It was never my idea to set standard for people or to tell people that this is how they should be doing. But my idea or my I think zest came from setting example. Ki like I am one of those examples and you can be one of those examples too. I am setting an example for you to be visible amongst people, and that in itself is activism, I would say. That is a lot. To be visible, to be trans person, to be visible on public spaces is a lot. And you know, just being out there telling your stories and, you know, setting stories like that, sharing your own word, all these things, I think this is how I feel. I like to communicate my, you know, what I feel about life and what I feel about my whole journey. And I hope people can also find some, you know, relatability and strength in the same.
Like even if you watch your short film, which I think all of you should, if you know, you will get some of what she just said. Trinetra. So somewhat the same thing, but also with the perspective of being someone that our community, is a transgender community in India, for a while you have been someone that we look up to. And I think that comes with its own pressure. I think this comes up in some of our conversations, even some of the things that you said yesterday, about that kind of a dynamic of being someone who is looked up to and also trying to be an actor in this industry, and the realities that come with that, which Tess also kind of hinted on even when we were talking earlier. So, we can talk from that perspective.
Hi. Hello. I think as far as being looked up to is concerned, I'll get to that in a minute, but growing up, and I'm going to be a bit of a bitch for saying this, but I love my mother, I really do. But I'm not going to be that person that says I looked up to my mother. No, that did not happen. She was not the woman that I looked up to as inspiration for womanhood. For me, it was, I think my womanhood is very borrowed, and I have no shame in admitting this at all. Because growing up, you have no reference of womanhood other than your biology and what society projects onto that. And the biology bit I didn't have. So my womanhood came from my teachers who would wear gajra, and my classmates, right, who had parents who would do their braids for them, etc. So I would say that femininity and womanhood in whatever capacity came from people around me. But if I were to look at a trans person for the first time, looking at someone and thinking that, okay, life could be a certain way, it was exactly that. It was also ghazal. Because, you know, at the time, there was very little trans representation. What did we have, right? For the first time from her, I heard the words gender dysphoria. I had no idea what those words even meant. And I must have been, like, I think, in the 9th or 10th grades. So, well before medical school and all of that. And she had written a short film, or I think she featured in a short film, and I think it was called Identity. And it was on YouTube, because YouTube was all we had to sort of like obsessively look at some example of transness or whatever, right? That was your Gigi Gorgeous and like all these things. Way back when. And I used to be like, yuck, I'm never going to be like that. Oops. Little bit inside capacity. Sorry, but I think her short film, in which she features alongside other trans people also, I couldn't believe it, honestly. I couldn't believe that she had the life that she did. And I know that this is conformist. This is saying that her life looked very cis and therefore it was something to look up to. But the association with transness is not success now. It's not dignity. It's not respect. It's none of those things. The association with transness growing up is inherently negative because that's all you see. And you don't want to grow up to be somebody that's on the streets, much as I have great respect for my sisters, right? Like, no one wants to, no one idolizes marginalization. And so I didn't either, and I think that was what representation did for me. It undid that. That said, it's been a year since I moved to this city. I accidentally became an actor 3 years ago, which I know is immense privilege. But now that I've done some of it, and I realize how much I love it, I realize that being a representative is such a burden. It is such a, it's exhausting. I don't like it. Because much as I really adore being in community, and Bombay has given me that, in a way that Manipal, a small town of 20,000 people, did not. And it's funny because Anirudh's sitting here. We went to medical school together and we were in boys' hostel together. And we were sitting and having this cis-trans conversation in boys' hostel like some 9 years ago. But yeah, there was no community there. There were no people telling you that it's going to be okay. There was just a hospital, an extremely hostile space where stepping in as I just started transitioning, and stepping in as someone that looked genderqueer in whatever capacity does not fit that niche of a doctor, so you just don't go there. That said, the reason I kind of as an actor don't like being a representative is because you need to step onto a set and be fucking empty and nothing and like start from there, right? Because you need to put aside all of the responsibility and the image that you have and this and that, whatever you build. And for me that happened even before my first job as an actor. Whereas a lot of other actors that I met have been at it for I don't know how many years and then have built that image. But when that community pedestalizes you already, it's exhausting to have to live up to that in extremely cis spaces like this industry where there's a completely different hierarchy that the community does not even see. And what the politics of that looks like on a set, how to navigate that, you know, on a set as big as, say, Made in Heaven, it was terrifying. I was like, it felt like the deep end of the pool and I really didn't know what I was doing. But I did have safe spaces, and I must mention this, that Neeraj Gevan was such a safe space on that set for me because not only do I admire his work, but also he was always someone I could walk up to and just say, listen, this outfit is giving me major dysphoria and it's fully fucking my performance up, can you please do something about it? And he would be like, I got you. And you need that one person on a set to find it and to be like, please. And it was scary. But that said, I do enjoy, of course, a lot of young people looking up to me because I didn't have that growing up. So to feel like, okay, maybe that can happen later on is a great thing, but it's a double-edged sword. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, round of applause. Alright, cool. So something that I thought about that and but it will come back to me, that's just how my brain is. And then next time it comes, it will be even more relevant. That's fine. So moving forward, I want to ask the two trans women on the panel, have you both had trans affirming surgeries? I mean, no, we don't need to know that. That's nobody's business, and nobody needs to know that. We'll stop asking trans women there. Obviously, Trinetra has put that all out there. Everyone knows, but can we please stop asking this, especially in casting? You don't need to know. But let's come to talk about the other elephant in the room when it comes to talking about transgender and non-binary representation in Indian cinema. And that is the fact that a lot of cisgender people get away with playing let me rephrase my language because that is my bias. A lot of cisgender people play transgender characters on screen. And this has happened constantly. Actually, me and Nida here did some work and trying to put down a number, and it's still growing. There's 250 transgender representations in Indian cinema. It is not a new thing. Just that all of them are highly transphobic and homophobic. So that's the topic we have coming to. And I thought that we can start off with Tess Joseph, because something to keep again in mind, like I said earlier, there's a lot of context and nuance. This is India. It is not the US, it is not the UK. Things are different. The dynamics are different. We have other issues also playing at play. There's something like caste that intersects with gender here, and a lot, almost every day. So the recipe will not be the same. Okay, so Tess, if you can, share your insights on this about where is the industry at right now, and also, I can always remind you some of these parts, but it'll be interesting because of the discussion here. Would you cast Trinetra or Bonita to play any cisgender roles? But also, first, can we talk about where do you think the industry is at right now?
So I think we all begin somewhere, So I'm going to just look at it historically, and I'm going back to the films I saw with just queer actors in roles, right? And they were all, Fire was the first one that I remember seeing, and yes, it was again cis actors who were playing those roles. It was a great moment because again, like I said, I think my closest friends are from the community, the people who I hold dearest to me, and then it has become a very important thing for me to stand by stories. It plays into commune, it plays into spoke, it plays into almost everything that I do. But we start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. Right? So, when I go back and I'm sitting and thinking about, okay, forget Jules and Jim. The first, films which really, even showed us like a gay couple, the first film I saw was a film called Early Frost with Aidan Quinn in it. I don't even know if anyone's seen that movie over here, right? And it was about, again, HIV, gay man coming out to his parents, or Philadelphia, which then came out much later. And then you had the Priscilla Queen of the Desert, and you had to Wong Fu, if I remember, because Patrick Swayze, who we had all romanced on screen, was then playing a drag queen, right? We have to begin somewhere. And I think what's amazing to see right now, and in those 250 roles which you mentioned, I'm very curious to know how many have happened in the last couple of years. Majority, right? And that's one foot in the door. That's one foot in the door of telling the story. And I do think all stories begin with this victim-villain space, which is what I wish we will move away from. More than anything is we've seen it with women on screen. We've seen it, traditionally with anybody who's been othered. We've seen it that this victim-villain, and we play this game constantly. We're seeing it even in mainstream narratives even now. Right, so one foot in the door. I think it's amazing that when we're sitting here, and I'm thinking 2 years ago we would not have this panel.
Yeah.
And that's just, I have to also say thank you to the pandemic somewhere, because the pandemic got us to tell stories.
Yeah.
The pandemic really brought, and I really think the queer voice became the strongest for me, at least, during the pandemic. I can say this because pre the pandemic we did a thing called Spoken, and we had Alok Ved Menon on stage, and it was a very small community that was screaming and shouting in the audience. And then a pandemic happens, and we come back and we can run a tour with this person, and and have somebody stand there and talk and share their story. So it begins somewhere. I think we're in a place where we're at a precipice where everybody is not a gatekeeper, but you're a stakeholder. Everyone here is a stakeholder. And if you're in this industry, and if you, like I was saying, my God, everybody has to have more queer friends. You can't just have to have more friends, because if you're not, you will hold your higher standards up to your friends. And your friends need to hold you to your standards. So whether you're a director, producer, writer, anybody, I can tell you we are like detectives, okay? So we have 2 projects where one which we did pre the pandemic, in fact in Monkey Man, we have Vipin Sharma, who I've never asked him about his sexuality, but from what I know he's cisgender, and he plays Alpha, who is the head of a transgender community. Everyone around him is from the community. He having to play a role which is highly demanding of craft is how he got it. Secondly, to try and do something in the middle of the pandemic, you had to be away for 6 months in a bubble in the middle of nowhere. where they were shooting. These are all very different dynamics that come into play. Vis-a-vis, literally last year, we've done a film where we have interrogated our director as to why have you written this film? Because here's a film which is entirely set in the community. It's very close to the roots of this country. And I need to know first, why are you here and why are you telling this story? Especially if you're from another country and you're coming here, I am going to ragrao you. Will you convince me? And then I need you to say we have to begin with the community. And we did that. And we can again only do this when someone holds our hand. So I can say that the only reason we could do this is because organizations held our hand, Humsafar held our hand. And we said we'll get things wrong and we'll mess up. But I was very clear, like, and we have so many, I can tell you, every other actor writes to us saying, I can play gay, I can act this. And I'm like, we have to remove this. And I hate to say it, it is said in rooms, in casting. You're asked to play things a certain way. Can you be, like, you know, can you act a little more gay, like in this role? Like, these are words said in casting. We have to remove this vocabulary from our rooms, and that's why I said everyone here is a stakeholder. So if you ask me right now, we're in a place where I think we all have a role to play. You know, we have two amazing people here, and who hold tremendous strength, and with that I think, you know, just a lot of other things that come with tremendous strength is also exhaustion and also helplessness. Strength and helplessness are best friends, because you will want to make 100 things change, and guess what? You will manage to do one small indie film and you will be the flag bearer of that film, which will not get a release. It will be seen in Soho House for sure at a screening. I'm saying it for myself also. I have so many films that are never going to release, you have no idea. But I'm saying, you know, like, we are all stakeholders. So yeah, we're in a place where, yes, and I said this to you, I said that, you know, I might say no to a film, someone else is going to do it. This is the reality. You might say no to a part, someone else is going to do it. And somebody will, and the person who's, it's hunger more than anything else, right? So, you know, if an entire community stands and says no to a part, the film is still going to be made. And so we have to find allies in every space. We really, really need to. No movement begins with just a community. A movement begins because communities, I think, join together and hold each other up. So that's it. But I think we're in a great place right now. When you say, I didn't think the number was 250. And I am more than certain, not even 5 years, like in the last, probably majority in the last three to four, like before the pandemic and right now.
No. So these are some of these films go like
They go way back, like we're talking Rishi Kapoor in the 1970s.
But majority would be in the last 3-4 years.
No. So actually the minority are now
Oh, really?
of this list, because this list is like we talking
Oh, you all
about,
were looking at history
yeah,
of
we're
it.
looking at the history
Yeah.
of Indian cinema, not just Hindi again.
Ah.
And also we're also counting movies that are just like, you know, they have one character who's transphobic, or this is catcher.
Okay, or like that, alright. Yeah, but and I mean, I'll tell you, like, you know, I also think, like, we little conversation we've had is that we need to have people from the community in positions of being critics. You know, we need to have people, you know, like, yeah, just someone has to flag stuff. Everyone, come on, please flag. You know, and then the duty of everybody is share. Like, you know, everyone has a voice. I think people underestimate what Instagram can do. You know, so I am very pro that whole idea that use it. If everybody in this room shared something, it would make, you know, a whisper sound at least like a voice. So, you know, we're all like partial. I think we're in a very interesting place. I think it is sad that we have to be here, that we have to put sexuality under a microscope. And I say this because I really don't like it. I don't like that I have to question someone to make sure you're from the community. Then, you know, this is the amount that one has to do to ensure that a role is given to somebody. Because we are trying to be extra cautious. Actually, honestly, nobody will care. Apart from maybe everyone in this room. I'm being, like, there's a larger industry which will not say anything. But that's the level of caution one has to kind of employ in order to cast somebody right now. And I think it's really upsetting that I have to talk to you so intensely about your journey to figure your sexuality, to then say, do you deserve to be auditioned for this role? That's hard. Plus, I do think that a community where there are two places. One, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I feel like we have to be really like brevity has to be there. But there are two things. There's empowerment that has to happen two ways for any community to shine. And if you want to talk about more voices and more queer actors and more trans actors, and to have people all on our screens from everywhere is one. We have to empower them with their craft and technique, and that comes from two places. One, from the actors themselves, and you really have to do the work, because guess what? The cis actors have been there forever, and they've been doing this for way longer. And it's a bloody marathon, and you have to run really fast, because for you it's a race to win.
Yep.
That's the truth. If and I feel like that's really important. But also we have to have production houses that say, oh wow, I see something here. I'm going to invest in making sure that I bring this person to a place where they can be as good as anybody. And that's the investment that we have to make. So it is really like, I feel like the biggest ally in the room has to be a producer. So befriend all. And because we're all that's where we're more stakeholders than we are gatekeepers. But yeah, if a whole bunch of stakeholders come together, the gate has to be opened. Right?
A round of applause. Also, just a insert of myself. Next week, I'll be starting to study production at Whistling Woods, so you're going to be friends with me. Just part of my faculty. The next question I'm going to direct towards Bonita. I'm not really questioning again, but you go ahead. So, what does it mean for you personally? So this is an amazing amount of insight we just received from Tess. Some things that I have heard of before, but I don't think anyone sat down and said to me in this way. So I was able to internalize it a lot more. And keeping that context, but also keeping the context that you are a transgender woman. What did it mean for you personally to see cisgender actors playing these roles as you grow up? Now, whether it was Salman Khan cross-dressing for a film, or a comedy with Kapil Sharma and all of the major stars cross-dressing there, or even films that were critically acclaimed and won awards, like I believe Sadak or Sangharsh, right? What did it mean for you growing up to see these kind of things happen on screen?
To be honest, like the majority of the time when I get to hear about Sangharsh and all these movies, I never saw these movies. I'm like, when were these made?
90s.
People know about these movies.
Not born.
How old are you? How old are you? No, there's Jenny.
You can't do this as a casting plan. I'm saying it's like we don't ask age. We don't.
How old do you look?
Screen age.
You should be answering that. But yeah, like I don't know. I didn't grow, thank God I didn't grow up watching those movies. But yeah, as you said, like skits will be there, comedic skits will be there, and it will be humiliating to an extent that you would feel like, oh, this is why I'm being laughed at. You see something on screen, oh, this is why I'm being laughed at. This is why I'm a subject of mockery. But I think it's a journey, it's a gradual process, and it's a stepping stone of how we are gradually shifting to literally having trans people playing trans characters. Because it starts, as Tess ma'am literally described it very well, it starts somewhere, and then for me it started with this an Oscar winner actor, Eddie Redmayne playing Dennis. Okay, so like, okay, he was a guy. But for me, like, that film meant more than that. Like, I don't care what people said or didn't say, but for me to see that there's an Oscar-nominated actor, he is doing a role of a trans woman, and he's not ashamed of it. A straight man is not ashamed of it, and this is what I've always felt, being trans is that something that you have to be ashamed of. And this is something that is being celebrated on Academy Awards. It's a huge, okay? We have had so many movies. Before Danish Girl, we have had so many movies about trans people, which have been played by which have been made by trans people also, and played by trans people also. But they never reached that kind of, popularity or it never made it to the general audience. It was when Eddie Redmayne played that character, then the conversation really started on a national. Even I got to know about it when Eddie Redmayne did it. So it had to start there. And then gradually, when you see Jared Leto as well, and then gradually shifting, then now we have Hari Neff, and then Hunter Schafer. And now we're shifting to a point where Hunter Schafer is actually doing roles in which she's not described as trans. Like in this movie, this Cuckoo, Kinds of Kindness, she's not really, yeah. So I don't think she's playing like trans character anymore, and it's not about her identity anymore. It's a journey, I think. And it's gonna take some time, but it's gonna go upward like that. And this was my experience with seeing me playing trans characters.
Yeah, no, like again, agree with you on that. Actually, even I loved and watched Danish Girl. Just one thing, like personally, what I have come across as the reason why they were winning the awards was because they were doing a shameful thing, and people were awarding them for doing, oh my, you're a cisgender person playing this role, so let's award. And that's actually some of the reason why these kind of awards continue. But that's just one perspective to that. While at the same time, for me, Danish Girl was one of my first, because they weren't, right? So there weren't any trans characters. So what did I see? I saw Lawrence anyways by Xavier Dolan. I see, Danish Girl. And they did get me to where I am too. But that's just the reality of it. Like, I don't think a trans person would get as many awards as Sushmita Sen for playing Tali, because it's a trans person playing trans, That personal bias just.
No, yeah, it's true. I mean, you have to accept that.
Yeah.
As you said, you would not see trans person winning so many awards as Sushmita Sen, and that's the way the society is. Society is not thoroughly ready for trans people. They don't want to see don't want to see trans people doing trans characters, unless some very well-known actor is playing that character. It tells so much about how much transphobia we still have in the society, and it's gradually dying.
I'm
I
hoping
totally
because of
agree.
your phenomenal performance as Kulu, we get to see a lot more of you.
Absolutely. I
I
wanted to add to that.
Same one.
And you got the section there actually.
Cool. Same question though.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to be said about what I think the audience should be demanding and what we as actors say about the trans experience of looking at a trans actor, etc. Of course, for me, watching Fire, torrented in high school, was extremely cathartic, right? Because at the time, the bar was so low that there was nothing else. So to see two women kiss was like, is that a boob? What's happening? Oh my god! So that was where it was at in my head, and that was groundbreaking for me to see that kind of intimacy. And I was like, this is on YouTube? How is this on YouTube? Like something, So I was just happy to be seeing something that resembles what I'm experiencing on a screen. Cis people have that privilege. They have that joy of growing up, especially in a country as inextricably tied to Bollywood, where cutting across castes, classes, religions, you as a cis person get to go to the theatre as a child and watch something that looks like you and aspire to it. We don't have that. And what we have is something to be ashamed of, right? So, and what does that do to a queer child? It makes you deeply shameful of yourself and the most beautiful parts of yourself. You're like, I don't want to be this. I think for us as actors or people from this community, it's okay to look up to those characters and say, you know what, this did something for me, it touched me. But it's only because audiences demand better now that filmmakers are doing things. That Meher was written was not because, of course, kudos to Zoya. She made that safe so much safer than it could have been, say, like 20 years ago. And that she took that affirmative action and created this part. So that's very important. But also, if an audience doesn't want it or doesn't demand it or is not critiquing cis people's performances as trans characters, filmmakers have no impetus. Why should I do it? I'll cast as this person. Now you all sit in and give me publicity by arguing on Twitter, na? That's what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know, okay, anyway, people will talk. Excellent. I'll cast whoever I want. Yeah,
There's
that's
so much that goes on behind the camera.
Yeah, and
There's
who
so
will come
much.
and get slapped in the face? Us on
Yeah.
social media. Because you're the lowest hanging fruit, you're the most visible person, right? So that is why I was saying earlier that's a bit exhausting because people don't understand the politics of what's happening with your character on screen and what's being said, and there's limited exposure, right? But coming back to your question, which was?
The cisgender people and playing trans characters, your experience of seeing that?
Yeah, so about that, something that I realized with a lot of clarity in the last 3 years is it's a brutal industry and you have to work very hard. And the thing is, because the community has given you a certain pedestal, you can't let that get to your head and be like, oh, okay, I'm something. You have to be fully okay with being nothing, insignificant as fuck, and being like, I am going to work very hard and do the work, do the workshops, do whatever I can, and work on that craft and get better, because why should someone hire you if you can't perform? So it's our responsibility as actors also to do that work, right? But apart from that, I would definitely say that, you know, just because cancel culture has died down a little bit and now we're talking about, you know, no, it's true. Like in 2020, cancel culture was all the rage and it was featuring in lots of scripts. But I would say that just because that has reduced does not mean we stop holding filmmakers accountable or audiences accountable or people accountable. For me, you know, it's about opportunity, right? So even if you have two cis people like Konkona and Aditi Rao Hedri in Neeraj Ghewan's work, I adored that, right? And I was so scared to say something about it because people would be like, oh, but they're not queer themselves. First of all, I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know? And secondly, even if they aren't, like it's Neeraj's also, it's his lived experience also, right? So for me, it's important that lived experiences make it two scripts and make it two performances, and that happens through participation and opportunity, as opposed to just necessarily a trans actor playing a trans character. That's not the end of the, that's not the end game here, you know.
I actually want to bring it back to both of you, especially because why is my brain like this? Exactly, yeah. So this idea, like what Bonita and me have spoken earlier, and you just now, you heard something Prince and you got a little excited and you wanted to say that, is this idea of what, there's a language, cinema has language, okay? So a lot of people tend to, when we have this conversation, cisgender, transgender, gay, transgender, LGBTQ playing roles, this nuance is lost. Cinema has languages. So in cinema, there's a language for being gay. This is what Tess was talking about, like, you know, be more gay, be more thing, right? And I know that Bonita has spoken about this experience where we are asked to perform in auditions, in projects, etc., a certain kind of trance. Even if that's not your lived experience, that's not how you emote. And now this idea of trans comes from those cisgender people playing the idea of trans for all these years. And so it becomes this kind of loop, right? And so what I want to ask you all is, in your experiences, has that ever come up? Where you've been asked to play a certain kind of trans, whether it's an audition, whether it's a film, or you felt like that was the reason that you didn't get a part?
Now after FFS, God help me, because I don't know. But generally speaking, yeah, in the sense that if there is a physicality that a filmmaker is looking for, then you can't take it personally every time. In the sense that, okay, if this is what the character's physicality is and it makes sense for that story and it's not arbitrarily thrown in for the heck of it, then I know for a fact that I don't have the physicality of, say, a lot of my Hijra sisters, and that's okay. So if I don't get that part, that's fine. You know, I will try to do as much as I can, but it's okay. And I think we as trans actors also have to understand that that's a thing. Physicality is a thing, right? And so you may have your own transition, and that's absolutely valid. But if you don't fit the part, you don't. But that said, of course, there are roles written in order to make that physicality that is center stage, right? It's not so much the performance, it's nothing. It's the fact that this famous cis actor is wearing a sari, you know, and is like wearing makeup, like that's been the case forever, and that's what brings people to theatres to watch it, the shock value of it. And that shock value does not look into the emotion of that character or that actor and what they're playing. It just looks, wow, what's going on? You know, super deluxe, that happened.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I don't like super deluxe. I do really like it. But we also can't argue that, you know, this famous cis actor, Mr. Sethupathi, playing a trans character, did generate those audiences, right? Whatever audiences, I wouldn't know the numbers. So it's sad that masala, the you know, that shock value, that's the thing that's center stage. That needs to die out a little bit. And humanity and stories like that you don't get to see. So again, fully forgot your question. Very sorry.
You actually answered it. You actually got it.
Oh, I answered. Okay, great.
You want to add anything?
You want to add something?
I think it goes without saying, to be honest. Like, I think a lot of the dolls, a lot of the trans girls have gotten the scripts that we all got in the scripts. And, you know, the kind of, you know, the brief that we will receive and, you know, the shock value that they would want. It has always been evident throughout all the advertisements or film characters or some sort of like. And I have always found myself in the middle of, I don't know, like not being trans enough sometimes, and sometimes not being girl enough for a trans character. It was always like that. Always, and I felt like I'm just not perfect for any character. And at one point I would just lose hope of having any character for myself, you know, and that's what actually pushed me to start writing and start making my own films and give myself that character, whatever I want to play. You know, if you don't give me a character, I'll make my own character and do that for and that's what I did with IYKYK as well. And gladly, LSD2 also came along. IYKYK was always on the way. I was always into filmmaking. But this came along, and I'm happy to have this experience as well. It gave me a great experience. It trained me as an actor. I had a great acting coach. So it did expose me to a lot of training. But at the same time, the stereotyping in the roles that you often get is quite prevalent. Yeah.
Can I add one little note? And I'm saying this absolutely from a personal space. It's almost like everything that at least we put up as a team it's always written. This is open to anybody. And you know, we try our best actually never to mention sexuality and gender as much as possible unless the script has defined it for the purpose of the story, right? What I've realized that we all can do is like you can fight for, if not a lead, a secondary, to be open to everybody, so that we don't have any prerequisite when we're calling anyone in, you know. And I'll say this to everyone, that be brave. Send the tape.
Yeah.
Don't restrict yourself.
Exactly.
Don't wonder whether you're enough, you know, on a spectrum of enough. Just be brave and send the tape. Because the more you put yourself out there, the more you send, and you actually push yourself to do roles which are outside the spectrum of trans, right? You will see, I'm sure it will create some kind of wave. And because we'll keep talking about the fact that yes, sexuality will be a spectrum, but humanity, our stories, we don't need to have a spectrum there. It should be open to everybody. Right? So I really want us to be more brave and don't think about, am I enough? You are enough. I mean, you're here, you're worth it. Like, everyone's a L'Oreal ad somewhere.
I just want to add it fully. At one point, I said this, I'll say it again. I want to play a pregnant woman. Like, I want to see what that looks like. If men can do trans roles and across the spectrum of anatomy, this I also want to do. I also want to be a pregnant woman. Full medicine I'll give you.
Pregnant.
Full walk, everything. I studied that head to toe. And that should be where opportunity is, I think. In a truly equal world, I really believe anybody should be able to play anybody.
Exactly.
I really, really believe that. So, but that isn't a perfect world where opportunity is equal. This is not one.
Yeah.
Also, so much onus on actors. Yeah, please. We have to move this onus into more of the industry.
Out of your acting.
Yeah.
So before I get into the last section, Paloma, you saying something?
Acha.
Audience questions after this. Okay. Okay. Okay, you want me to not skip this? Okay, ask him. I think someone was messaging me trying to say this, but should I check the phone? So what we just discussed is probably the best segue into the thing we're discussing next, is kind of the need to tell our own stories. And something you would have seen even in even the first movie that was screened today, which was Love by Sudhanshu Sarkar. But even that one is about telling our story in our own way. In a very interesting way, that movie also remains outside of the gaze that a heteronormative filmmaker would have taken, and remains in a very queer, very gay gaze. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. This thing about, what we were just talking about, the thing you all also expanded on. It's called an Ouroboros. I actually Googled that. That's a snake that eats itself. And that's what's happened with this cinematic language that exists. And when you go to create content, sometimes when you're trying to create a film, and even as a filmmaker you want to be convincing, you might lean into these stereotypes because they exist and they'll be convincing. So sometimes when you give a flawless trans character, it's unbelievable. And actually, Meher actually had that feedback a lot. That is not believable as a trans woman. What is this like? So,
I have something to say about that also, but
so again, as we go into this part, let's hold nuance as always. Like you all just pointed out, there is people like Hunter Schafer, and even you just now said that I would love to play a pregnant woman. Hunter Schafer saying that I don't want to play trans roles, right? So, Bonita, something that seems to be a recurring pattern in your work so far is portraying just how complex and challenging a trans life can be. And just how much of it is because of how we are seen in society as opposed to our own gaze. So in LSD2, Kulu suffers so freaking much because all of the agency and income are so dependent on the cisgender population that interact with her. Actually, for those of you who saw it today, the first entire half, you don't know where Kulu's at on this event that's taking place. Nobody knows. Kulu's just going. And we all know what's happening only because of everybody else's gazes about what's happening to Kulu. For me, that part by Dipakar Banerjee, the Kulu segment, seemed to portray how cisgender folks have preconceived notions of us and how that ends up playing out on our lives, right? So the fate lay in the hands of the cisgender supervisor in that case, right? So if you know, we see this theme again, where each interaction with someone new allows us to see yet another transgender trope when it comes to dating. So again, it's centered in that because it affects our life. That's what I told you. It resonates. Also, I think Trin says something similar to this in Rainbow Rishta. I felt so much of my life feeling so small, especially at the hands of men. Right? This does play into our lives so much. So can you tell us about what it was like in these two cases, portraying our own stories, and what's going to be like, even what we're going to see coming forward and what your ambitions are?
I think when you are working with someone, like honestly, when I'm acting, like I try to listen to the director or the writer as much as I can, and I abide by them. I don't indulge a lot unless they ask me to, and I feel like I have to own it as much as I can. This is the character. This is why I'm doing it. This is the reason, and I need to get it done. This is what my driving force would be. But when you're actually making a film, when you're in a creative charge, when you are able to change the way things are, that gives you, I think, more of a freedom to give more light to the character, the light that I have seen in my life. That comes from my own real life, and to showcase that, that is very different. I think something that's been experienced and something that's been seen, there's going to be a little major difference in that. And this is just how I navigate within these two fields, I feel.
And going forward, what kind of stories do the ones you make,
Going forward, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of movies I might make next time. Like, it just really depends on what I'm doing. And then I'm very much interested in Gen Z, current youth, the modern dating culture or modern culture, lifestyle of youth. I have a lot of friends in Vadodara. I hang around with them, and kind of like sometimes I would even have bad, horrible experiences. Not so much, but like I would kind of just go and just be there and sort of observe what's going on, what is, boys' life is like, or what is young people's life is like, and stuff like that, and sort of point it down and write it down, and things like that. But definitely around youth culture, I would love to explore. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot happening in my own personal life as well. Like, people think that, I become this huge actress and now I'm earning crores. Yeah, like my village people would think, then, my relatives would ask my mom, ki bahut paise kama rahi hai ab to, they would literally think like that. Because I've been on TV and I've been on interviews and stuff. But it's not really the reality. Like, I have a lot of expenses. I'm not even like saying it like that. We like literally have a lot of expenses.
I do, please.
I totally resonated with that.
Yeah.
Anybody here would like to see If You Know, as a feature film? Just putting that energy out there, we are.
Let's see.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely work on that one.
Alright, Tess. So Tess, you were the co-producer on the film Girls Rising, which was Oscar nominated, right? Along with Priyanka Chopra and other folks that came together and you put this together. And you've had like a long career where you've worked in films like the names that we've taken, where you're seeing these more deeper stories, a bit more layered, especially like when I'm dying to see Monkey Man, but I've read all the reviews and again the same things happening there. There's a lot of layering. It's not like what you said, right? We're moving away from just the victim, at least you're trying, and it's the industry, some folks are trying to move away from that victim villain narrative. So what is your take on it? Where are we at when it comes to telling our own stories, and not just in terms of trans and queer, but also any other examples?
So, even I took a break from casting and everything that I was doing, and at a point where I had actually cast Lion and took 2 years off to do Girl Rising, which is a story about just girls in different parts of the world and their stories. We had to rally it with so many women because that's the only way it would get made. So it was so hard, to find great writers, because you have to also raise money, right? So when it's crazy on one level when you're trying to tell stories, because this is the story that's worth telling, and then they'll tell you empower it with, but it needs X and it needs Y to suddenly find credibility, when actually the story on its own is credible. So it's a tough place. I will say that when it even comes to narratives of anyone, when I'm talking even about queer stories, so I can say that Commune, when we decided on Commune and created Spoken, we were very clear. And it became a space built by people who really believed in telling authentic stories. So I can say this with certainty that for me, inclusivity is never a choice, it's a decision. There is no... Yeah, it's really simple. If I'm going to say that on the spoken stage, I'm going to have at least 20% stories which are from the queer community, I'm going to find the stories from the queer community. You cannot come and tell me that, oh, but this wasn't as good as XYZ. I'm not going, I don't need to validate that with any kind of response, because I've taken a decision. And we talked about this a little, like I don't understand the word equality unless we talk about equity. So unless we have enough representation, unless I have enough actors, I'll be very honest, unless I have enough actors out there, up there, in a line, standing for roles, I can't talk about equality in the scene. I'm like I said, this is a luxury, right? This is really a luxury in that sense. And I wanted to say this because if I can, that I've actually worked in the audition room with both these actors. And there's one thing that you said which is very beautiful, that when you're with a director, you kind of surrender. And that's one of the most basic things an actor has to do. So you can't bring everything of your politics into the room. I can't always bring my activism to the room because my character doesn't need that. My character needs surrender, and it's ownership and surrender holding hands together, right? So that's the hard one. So, we will still have roles where we are trying to show that this community is different. We're going to show that, oh look, different people. And then I hope we move into a space where it's just, these are just our stories. And there's everybody in our stories. I think, when I see a series like, and I've talked about it, like Heartstopper for me was just so special because we all want to be loved that way. Right? Like, I mean, come on. Who didn't want to be loved the way like you saw in Heartstopper? But that's what we want. We want to be in a place where, it doesn't matter. Like when I remember when Bridgerton happened and Jonathan Bailey then came out and said he was gay, and I was like, if Bridgerton wasn't successful, he would have never said anything. He would have said very quietly and gone into the next audition and not said anything. So Andrew Scott, for that matter, even has taken so long. Ian McKellen, who's such a, who's for me a flag bearer of so many things, but has taken, everybody takes their own time, everyone will find their moment. But we're in a place where I think the biggest thing that anyone can do is try. Ask, stand there and say, and just send the tape. So what if it's not this one? You send the tape 4 times and you'll be bloody good and you will get a call back. And I can say that about both the people here, is that, you will, I think, only be in more callbacks and more callbacks and more callbacks, and eventually someone will get the role. But wow, I put my hand on my heart and say that I don't think there will be a project where you will not get a call back because you're both that good.
I want to ask you something that we kind of skipped on the previous one because now you just kind of brought it back with talking about them both. And all the wannabe actors in the room, casting director, who do I know, including myself. So, would you ever cast? And I mean, I'm asking this more not from, whether it's your person, but more from like situational awareness. Would you cast Bonita or Trinetra to play a cisgender woman's role? Like, which has been written without any trans in the question.
I think, Trinetra touched on it very beautifully, and you brought up intimacy, and you brought up, how much of intimacy are we going to have in a role? It really there would be a lot to do with that. I don't think I would ever stop someone from coming in. Would I ever mention someone's sexuality? Never. That's why I said I think it's such a weird place. It's almost like Catch-22, because you have to know in order to be inclusive, and then, you want to then just be able to mask it also, because so it's crazy. It's really Catch-22 on one level. But I don't think, in a heartbeat I would cast you in anything. I think, again, I'm being going to be really honest, is that when we're looking at sexuality, we're looking at the ideas of what we say are cis roles, and even within cis roles itself, like what is masculine enough and what is feminine. It's crazy the things that end up being spoken inside rooms. And I don't, and I can say that, I'm a person who'll walk out, or I'll say I won't do it. We won't do a project which has, I almost say like, a meter of insensitivity. If it reaches a point, then we'll just be like, no way. Right? But you have to try, and you can keep trying, and that's the only way. I think we have so many different cis actors in roles now, which has also changed. Like, I look at pre-OTT and post-OTT, and there is a different world of actors out there. The ideas of beauty have changed. The ideas of masculinity have changed. So many things have changed. So it's going to evolve and change, and we need to have more people. And I think I love the idea of, let's not know, and then even if we don't find out later, great. If we do find out later, I love it. Like, I think it's great. Let it be the moment where you're like, really? That's good. Let the general audience react that way. Let them be surprised with joy and awe, rather than it become the reason. Right? But I will still say that means that trans actors need to apply for all roles. That is where it begins. I can tell you this as a fact for every role that we've sent out, because we know so much of the community now. since we've done a lot of work in the space, very few people apply. So this is like the biggest casting call that I can say. It's like apply, change the narrative. You know, help us to change it.
Applause. I would totally apply now. I mean, I
was
don't
very
apply
upset
because-
that I was like, wait, I haven't met you. This is the first thing I said. You haven't been in my audition room. This is the first thing I said.
Nah, the reason is the people who work with you did not shortlist me. No, but I'm gonna suck up to you. So, Trinetra, in Made in Heaven, there are some things that Meher said that really resonated with me as a trans woman on a very personal level. For example, in that really intense scene in episode 2 on Meher's first date, Meher says at one point, "Gaali bhi dete ho, sex bhi chahiye." Right? And this is someone she's sitting in the car which she met on a date, etc. And I deeply resonated with it. It felt so authentic to me as from a trans experience. Now, I don't know if you wrote it or it was just the fact that it was a transgender person portraying Meher making me feel
It
that
wasn't
way.
in the original script. I sent an email saying, "Can I say this?" And Zoe was like, "Say it." And I was like, "Yes! I get to say this on screen." So those two lines, like "Gaali bhi dete ho or sex bhi chahiye, if you're so ashamed of what you're attracted to, you should fuck yourself." And I was like,
Round of
yes. So I'm very grateful that, of course, I had no say in the arc and things like that, but these little things here and there, yeah, she was open to that.
So there were. Can you elaborate on what it is like to, for me, this experience meant something to me because the filmmaker in this case was open to listening and taking in your input. So, in your experience, like how important would that be to create authentic trans experiences?
So, wait, I was going to say something after what Bonita said with regards to that, but I've forgotten, so we'll just stick to this. But about Meher, before we get into that, something I want to say is we don't get to see queer joy. It's just not a thing. It's not a thing. You see so much trauma. No offense. But like, it's important to represent reality, but sometimes I feel like a lot of cis people take a little perverse joy in exaggerating that trauma and putting it up on a screen for people to gawk at, which is so, it's a little disgusting to me, to be honest. And we've seen it in so many kinds of Indian cinema, right? Like Nagar Kirtan in Bangla. I loved that movie. I really thought it was an honest performance and all of that. But it is trauma porn at the end of the day. So I feel like we don't get to see enough queer joy. And growing up, same thing, it ties back to that. When you see one person having this much queer joy, it gives you that permission to be yourself. And for that reason, when I had the opportunity to audition for Meher, what really stood out for me is so much trans joy in this one character. I'm just like, wow, that does not happen. Or even Rainbow Rishta, where we got to tell our own stories. Kudos to you. And see, the most beautiful thing about Rainbow Rishta, I think, is that it doesn't take one person and burden them with the responsibility of being this perfect representation of an entire community. That's fucking impossible. You can't take one role and be like, this has to be the perfect representation. Nahi hoga. It doesn't, because the community is so diverse and our lived experiences are so diverse. Also, in the shadow, my hair is doing one weird thing. Yeah, so the only answer to more authentic representation is more representation. Where over time, because there will be diversity in characters and people playing them, in culture it will get inbuilt over time. It won't happen with one part or one character. That's not how it works. So I was very happy to see queer joy in Meher. But coming back to your question, which was?
Like, how do we go about, like, how was basically Downey, how significant that was, having you in the room, and the power that came to that character part?
I think something that I really would like to see in the future is, like Tess said, more of us coming forth and being ourselves, and as the years go by, that will happen. This panel was impossible a few, years ago even, like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have seen it happen. And more of us doing stuff behind the camera.
Yes.
So much. And so, can I just say, it's so inspiring to me Because one of the reasons that I've held back from exploring writing is because I know nothing about it. How will I do it? And to see you be so young and just go for it and be like, fuck it, I'm going to write my own thing and be my own person is so inspiring to me. And that's...
You inspire me so as well, you know, and me and Trinetra have been in touch for a long time.
Years.
And I remember when we needed to whenever I needed help with hormones or anything, surgeries or anything, she would be one text away and she would just come back with a lot of text, a lot of voice notes, a lot of pictures, whatnot. And you know, like I'm just truly grateful of that friendship, and I'm happy to share this, you know, this stage with you and to have this moment. It's just unreal and surreal for me. Truly.
So y'all are saying no time for Q&A?
Let's do a few audience questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
we were right there. Y'all on time, we are on time, we made it together. Sorry, yeah? And then, oh, your hand is up for Q&A? I'll say a few words and then you can do the Q&A.
But we started.
Yeah, actually, so we're just gonna skip this last thing unless y'all have a quote that you already know you wanna say, which is where we go from here. You all have said things already. But I just thought if you have something to say.
I want to audition lots more. Looking at you. And every casting director in the city, so the thing is, for me, I feel like this 1 year I've learned so much about myself in this city, and Bombay really does do that to you. It'll like fully fuck up your system, and then suddenly one day you're like, wow, this is also possible. Very cool. But something that I've learned is I've grown, how do I put this? I've had more ease as time has passed in my own transition, just being around people, etc. So yeah, I just want to do a lot more auditioning.
Anyone?
She has a mic.
There's a thing to give a quote or something.
Yeah, or any, like, you know, where do we go from here? It can be meta, it can be you, it can be me. Mix up.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine.
So I'm just going to conclude the discussion part and we're going to Q&A. Just one thing I want to say is this is the reason why the joy thing in Meher resonates, and I'm hoping, at least from my side, this is what I want to look forward to, is a lot of queer joy, because something that a lot of people forget about the lack of queer joy and trans joy on screen is y'all as in just generally everyone forgets the trans people in the room. What does it mean to be trans and to see for 30 years that the only thing you can be is a victim? Do you want to be trans? Would you want to be trans? So it's the reason why we need so much queer joy on screen, and that's like that. I hope that's where we go from here.
Quick add. And it's not like that joy has to exist in isolation. You know, like Joyland was so beautiful in that you see patriarchy told through the lens of not just the trans person but everybody, but at the same time with Biba also, right? You see a trans wedding, I'm like, wait a minute, I've not seen this anywhere. Like that didn't even happen on Made in Heaven, which is like a shadi show, literally. So,
Season 3 maybe, I don't know.
maybe. Fingers crossed.
I mean, they're
Yeah, no, but for real, I think that this whole we want to portray reality does not mean it has to be one or the other. It can be everything.
Alright.
Q&A time. One person already had their hand up. Oh yeah, round of applause, please. I want to do applause, please.